All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Wednesday, May 3rd, North Middlesex Council meeting. This time I'll call the meeting to order. Roll call, Councillor Cornelison is not able to join us tonight. And I just want to say our thoughts and our condolences go to Kelly, or to Karen and Adrian on their loss here this week. Also, I just want to make mention before we start to thank staff for the job they did yesterday for the municipal day, the Middlesex County Municipal Day. It was a real good day, and I want to thank staff for all of their efforts in that. Disclosure of pecuniary interests. Any? Seeing none. If you have any later on, please forward them through to the clerk. Minutes of the previous meeting from April 19th, 2023. Any errors, omission, or business arising from that? Seeing none. Motion by Councillor Daigle, second by Councillor Nerda. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. So we need to adjourn the regular meeting to proceed into public meetings, including Committee of Adjustment. Councillor Keogh, Councillor Irwin, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Our first item is notice of public meeting to consider application B05 2023 located at 27588 New Ontario Road. The applicant is Nelson and Lori McLaughlin, and the agent is, I have Joseph down as the agent, but I'm not sure. You can give your name when you come up. If the applicants want to come up, or whoever wants to come up to the table here. Evening. Stephanie, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. The subject lands are located on the north side of New Ontario Road, west of Cassie Road, and are approximately 135 acres in size. The subject lands consist of 3 formally separate parcels of land, being 27588 New Ontario Road, which is highlighted in yellow on the screen in front of you. A portion of
Thank you, Stephanie. At this time, we still have a problem with this. It's echoing pretty bad. Yep. All right, we'll try this again. Applicant, anything you'd like to add to this? Comments to this?
Good evening, and thank you for having us. My name is Courtney Sinclair, and I'm here on behalf of the agent, Joseph Hentz. And I'm here today with Nelson McLaughlin, the applicant. I just wish to provide some comments, and I will also answer any questions that the committee has for me. Proposed condition number 8 is that parcel 2, which is the orange parcel, be merged with the rest of the lot there to create a 100-acre lot and make that whole again. Now, I wish to raise 2 issues with that proposed condition. One being that the owner of the parcel to the north of the rail line there, to the north of the orange parcel, one of the owners is Mr. Robinson, but then there is another owner on title. We feel that it is improper to have a condition that involves a third party that is not a party to this application. And secondly, the other issue is that the owner of that parcel has already indicated that he does not wish to merge those 2 lots. So that condition will be impossible to fulfill and will ultimately doom this consent application. We propose instead that instead of merging, we're requiring the condition that those 2 lots be merged into the 100-acre parcel, that the orange lot that you see on your map be dealt with via a zoning bylaw amendment instead. As part of the application, a covering memo was submitted as well that spoke to these zoning issues. And there are several examples where in the A1 zone, there are some site-specific amendments that allow for zoning that is much smaller than our lot that we're dealing with here. So we propose that it be dealt with in that manner, rather than requiring that all of those lots merge into a 100-acre parcel. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now I would ask for any comments from the public. Is there anyone who wishes to speak from the public here? I'll ask once more. Anyone wishing to speak from the public? Seeing none, I would ask committee, council, questions from council. Councilor Daigle.
Before this land was at the railroad and out of one piece. Obviously, it's like a piece of land at that time. So otherwise, and then say in the northern part, it would have all merged when you bought the railroad. Because it merged with the southern part. So it's the legal non-conforming all along. Why are we trying to take those non-conformity away?
Okay, Stephanie, do you have a response to that?
So through the mayor, to the councillor, so just a reminder that yellow, green, and orange are one parcel today. So there isn't a zoning deficiency at this point in time because it's one parcel of land.
A follow-up?
But prior to the railroad being sold off, that was the orange was a separate parcel of land under separate ownership. So we can't, just because they're doing this, I guess, away. With the one, that property is legal non-conforming.
Other questions or comments from council? Councilor Irwin.
Thank you, Your Worship. First a comment and then a question. I did raise at this council several months ago the need to review our official plan. Part of it was the requirement for agricultural land farms being 100 acres minimum. And I still want to come back and do that at some point when we look at the official plan. So I'm not comfortable with the recommendation as it is. My question is, can we separate part 1 and part 2 and vote on them separately? So do we need to vote on the whole recommendation? Can I vote on part 1 and then vote on part 2?
Comment to that, Stephanie.
Through the mayor, I would need clarification application, I'm not quite
Yeah.
sure what. Are we referring to the two conditions that we received from the learner's lawyer?
Your worship, I'm gonna go back to the planner's report here and find it. There was partial one, which is the existing land in the green, so I see that as part one. Part two is the other piece of property with the orange piece. So I'd like to separate and vote on part one and then vote separately on part two. So granting the addition of the railway lands and then voting separately on the piece where the recommendation is to have the severance as per the issue in the learner's letter.
Stephanie, go ahead.
Through the mayor to the councillor, I don't believe that is possible. So again, it's one parcel of land, the applicant is applying to do a boundary adjustment to remove the middle portion, which would result in two separate parcels.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Hodgins.
Okay, just it's some clarification and maybe for Nelson or whatever too, but I'm under the understanding, I know when this was brought back and the Lawrence area it was a one separate little piece anyway at one time. But when those people bought that 3 acres or whatever railroad tracks, it all went in and there's a second person there, I believe. That's why you're talking 1 or 2 people have ownership on that piece of that orange block of 23 acres. Same person owns it, but there's maybe 2 people on that back.
The orange parcel is owned by Robert Robson.
Just his name?
Just his name. So Robert owns the orange parcel, the green parcel that I'm requesting to be taken out. And then he also owns the yellow parcel, which was Robert's dad's farm. So when Robert bought the railroad, the railroad would only deal with one person's. So he bought the railroad from concession to concession, which is Cassidy up to Evergreen. So there is a road allowance that goes through the Mahan farm that is, I think, the pink strip there. Right. So that's why Robert owns all that. So when he purchased it, he put the railroad in his own name only. So that's why the township or impact, whoever does it, amalgamated that all as one chunk. So if it would never have been amalgamated as one chunk, it wouldn't be an issue separating it out. So my request is only just to separate the green out. Robert will retain his 2 parcels and the rest of the railway will be retained with all within the yellow.
Okay, so.
Follow up? Go
Just
ahead.
to continue on, no, I think that's a little bit of clarification. I'm okay with the green going back and making that a whole 100 farm, just to say it. But Stephanie, like with almost needs a severance on both ends of that 100 acres. And then does it not, or not necessarily? I'm just questioning.
So through the mayor to the councillor, so again, the application is a severance application for boundary adjustment. So the green will be merged on title with the applicant. And what is left over is going to be 2 separate parcels.
Okay, that's fine. Okay.
So to see, okay, Councillor Irwin, go ahead.
So just to bring clarity, when I meant part one and part two, page 5 of the report, parcel 1, parcel 2 is what I was referring to. Parcel 1 is what the deputy mayor was just commenting on, having the owner with the proponent assume the railway land in green. I think that's something we should do as a council. And I think, given what Councillor Daigle said, we don't touch the rest of it at this time.
So to try to put some clarification to this, council can approve your recommendation as it sits or without, I think it's amendment number 8, whatever council's wish is, or to deny it, but that is the options in front of us, I believe. Is that not right? Stephanie, if you can answer that.
Mayor, yes.
Okay, thank you. That's just one. Any more conversation on this? Questions on this? We have a recommendation in front of us. Councillor Daigle.
Our recommendation is to accept the report minus the 8 condition.
Minus number 8 on that, correct? Okay. Counselor Irwin, seconding it? Any more discussion on that? In favor? In favor, okay, carried. Thank you. Thanks, Nelson.
Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Our next item is notice of public meeting for information on application 39T-NM-2301/ZBA 052023. The applicant, are the applicant with us or through virtual? Rob, are you coming up or are you letting your applicant come? Oh, okay, all right. No, we have someone here. All right. Oh, and we have someone coming in on Zoom on virtual as well? Okay. Okay, are we ready? Do we have our person on Zoom? No, that's fine, as long as you're there. Okay, Stephanie, go ahead.
So the purpose and effect of the draft plan subdivision is to create 178 single detached dwelling lots, 4 medium density blocks, cumulatively, containing approximately 22 street facing townhome units, 1 larger medium density block containing approximately 55 townhouse units, 2 blocks for open space.
Thank you, Stephanie. At this time, the applicant comments.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Nick Dijak. I'm with Strict Baldnelli Moniz. I'm the planning consultant representing the applicant, Patent Landscaping, and the owners. Basically, Stephanie said everything that I wanted to in terms of what was going on and what the next steps were. But in terms of the design of the application and why we did the subdivision, if there's any questions related to that, I'd be happy to speak to how we got to where we are and what we're proposing for the zoning. She did mention that we were looking for some special provisions that were requested for the R1 and R2 zones. The lot frontage would be minimized to reflect the current housing conditions these days, and the minimum 15 years is just a bit too large for what we seek for these days in terms of building and housing costs. It's just we look for more of 11, 12 meters on average, and then 15 meters would be the larger estate type houses these days. So we're just reflecting that market condition, and that minimum lot area is just subsequent of that minimized lot frontage, and likewise for the row housing there too zone request. So fairly minimal request in terms of changing or for site specific provisions for the subdivision as a whole. And I did want to acknowledge that it is a rather large subdivision. There's a number of a total of 255 units that could be accommodated within this area. So we do acknowledge that it is large. It wouldn't come all at once. It would be phased out. So those discussions regarding sanitary capacity have been held and will be continued to be held as we go through the design of this phase and then more detailed engineering. A couple of weeks ago, we did have an open house to allow the public to kind of ask questions and figure out what it is that we're doing and find more information. And there was a total of 14 people that attended, and one person spoke to us online. It was fairly positive, and we did consider their comments in terms of flooding and traffic. And I think that this design that we have reflects their issues in terms of design for the traffic. Mill Craig Street wouldn't be a through street; it would dead end there. So the proposed design that we have would not continue through Mill Craig. So those would be two separate. Traffic would have to go through Ruskin or to Eagle Street. And then the flooding issue with the drain there, the site servicing study has been done in terms of an initial review of capacity. Stormwater would be held within the storm pond that's located in the northwest corner of the site. The size and the design of that storm pond has not been done yet. We'll continue to do that as the engineering goes through the next phase for the next stage of approvals. But what we have now is kind of the approximate area is approximately 1 hectare of land, which should handle the pre-development stormwater capacity before going back into the creek. So in terms of flooding, we don't feel that we would be contributing to the existing condition, but that would also be looked at in terms of the next stages and how we're handling the potential flood hazard. So with that, I just want to say thanks for the time and happy to answer any questions and looking forward to moving things along. Thanks.
Thank you. At this time, I would ask, is there any questions from the public? Seeing no questions from the public, questions, comments from council? Deputy Mayor Hodgins.
Through you, Mayor Rob. Great looking subdivision. I mean, one of the questions I've always had, and I threw it at Stephanie there, number one, and I know you don't own the land to the south, but it seems like an awful lot of traffic that's going to go through Ross, Keene Street to get to Main Street and possibly Old Eagle. But I would think the bulk of the center, they're going to stop at Ross Keene, which is going to a lot of traffic issues. I don't know whether anything can be considered there and continuing, extending. I know you're going into a person, but long-term to extend that one long street that runs north and south, whatever the name it'll be at the time, and come out and connect to McLeod Street, which, okay, yes, it'll extend with a bridge going over the Cameron Gillis drain, but it will just alleviate some of the traffic going downtown. Because I'm just thinking most people, whether 50% of them are going to maybe head for jobs in London, they're going to want to sneak out that way without going through town. It's just something to consider. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Other questions? No other questions, comments? Stephanie, did you make comment or somebody want to make comment to that, to the deputy mayor's comment? Stephanie?
So through the mayor to the councillor, I just pulled up the draft plan here, which I zoomed in on purpose. So the challenge with the request you provided is, of course, ownership of private lands becomes a challenge. However,
Any other questions, comments at this time? Seeing that, I see that you are connecting it to the, I think it's to the north there, what you already have going. That smaller subdivision that you've got started. I see you are talking about an exit out there as well onto Eagle. Okay. All right. Any other questions? No other questions? All right, so at this time, thank you. And we're taking that. We have a recommendation in front of us to accept this information. Councillor Nerda, Councillor Daigle, all in favor? Carried. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Thanks, Rob. I need a motion to adjourn public meeting, including Committee of Adjustment, and go back into regular council. Councillor Keogh and Deputy Mayor Hodges, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Delegations. We have a Solid Bayfield with us and they stuck around. Thank you very much, Brian and Mary, for coming and come on up to the table. Sorry for the delay, but thank you very much for coming.
Technology is a wonderful thing when it works, right? No worries. It's nice to be here in person. It's nice to see a few familiar faces with Mr. Hodgins there. Anyhow, thanks for letting us come tonight to be a delegation. For some of you, I should introduce my name's Brian Horner. I'm the general manager of Solid Bayfield. This is Mary Bailey's, our healthy watersheds manager. Tonight we're going to talk about our draft cost apportionment agreement. Some of you might say, what is that? As part of the CA Act update that's been ongoing for the last couple of years, the province has deemed some of our existing programs that we provide, we'll say is non-mandatory, and they say category 3. And what they need us to be able to do is with each of our member municipalities, in order for us to levy these programs and services, we need to have these cost apportioning agreements in place by the end of this year to be able to levy it in 2024. It's not effective for 2023, but it's for 2024. I'm going to ask that if we can, does everybody have our few pages of our presentation? I think it's about 18 pages. It's not the handout that Mary was good to hand out to everybody, but everything else. Yeah. No, it's fine for me as long as everybody has it. Okay. So it's really three separate things I've kind of put together. I'll just kind of go briefly through it because I'm going to kind of go overview, and then Mary might look at a few more detail on the programs, and she's here to certainly ask more of the if there's more specific detailed questions. She's the we'll say the brains of the operation. The first one is just a guide to the apportioning agreement. It kind of gives a little bit of history of the authority, and on page 2 of it, if you go to it, it kind of has a breakdown. It says category 1, 2, and 3 items. The category 3 items is where we have to, those are the ones that we're going to have to levy, or the cost apportioning agreements we're going to have to enter into. And these are items in the category 3 that we said: the watershed, sub-watershed strategies, the environmental monitoring and research, the watershed stewardship and restoration, as well as the conservation education. These are programs and services that we at Solid Bayfield have been doing for decades. And they're programs that probably about 15 years ago, we had about 30 community members get together, and we asked, what do you think we should be doing? And these were the programs that they wanted us to be involved with. So that was some 15 years ago. And we revisit that every year when we're doing budgeting. we look at the programs and how that would fit into the conservation strategy as well as the watershed management strategy. So that's there. Page 3 on this document, it just talks about financial considerations, and I will kind of address that. This is for 2024. It has no effect on the 2023 budget, which has already been passed. And the other page, I mean, we have a map of our area, but the other one I'd like to address at the very last page, that page 6, where at the very top you see table 1. If everybody is there, I'm just looking around. That's good. And this came from our board. They wanted us to send something out that showed, okay, what is the levy that we put out there for category 3 items that we're talking about? And if you go to the very bottom, it has the $204,000 total municipal levy to our 12 member municipalities. That $204,000 represents approximately 15% of our overall levy that we put out. And what I also want to address, that 204, you'll also see in the very top part, or the second line, it says total cost of these programs is $1.26 million. What I want to show you there is, we're putting there, yes, we levy $204,000 for the category 3 items, which we consider is locally mandated. So, but with that 204, we're able to leverage another $1 million from outside sources to fund these programs, which I think is still a really good bang for your buck. For every local dollar of one, we get another $5 or $6. So that's a pretty good bang for buck. And you'll see, if you look on North Middlesex line for those 204, it's about, the apportionment number is about 11%. It's about $24,000 for those programs. So that's what that one is. The second kind of section is the cost apportioning agreement itself. And this agreement, I say it's in draft form. This is basically, it's a few revisions. This is a document that we reviewed with all of our member municipalities back last fall. We looked at with senior staff here. I'm looking around, your former CAO. We met with him and we had input from them. And this is basically what it was then. And that's what our boards approved. And a couple highlights on it, and just with the agreement, we've currently got in here that the first term of the agreement, we're recommending, this was, again, we talked to senior staff, we're saying 5 years for the first term, and then hopefully 4 years after that, every 4 years after that. You might be saying, why 5 and why 4? The thought process is that if we look at 5 and initially, based on when elections are for council, then we would look at this would be for this term of council. And then the next term, it would be in the middle year that we would have it. And after that, it would be every middle year. We think that's good when we talk to staff, because that way we all know when everybody comes on new, the first year is really busy. But if we put it in the second year, every council would still get, I'll say, a bit of a country bumpkin. Everybody would get a kick at the can of what services they'd want. Okay, so that's why we have a different terms, 5 and then 4, or that's what we're proposing. The next part of this agreement, the attachment, we're saying is Schedule A. And that's a breakdown of these different service areas. And it's a summary also of what you've seen previously on table 1. The very first part of it, we'll stay in the service area. You see the familiar ones. The total program costs of these category 3 items is 1.26. The federal and provincial contribution on that is about 560,000. Self-generated revenue is about almost 500,000. And then again, the municipal levy portion of about $204,000. So that's where that, and then each of the next 4 ones that we talked about the watershed and sub-watershed strategies. We have a breakdown on there with North Middlesex portion of 2,500. The next page with environmental monitoring and research, we have about $8,000. The watershed stewardship and restoration we have with a total cost of 470, and then we have the conservation education one at the last one. So those are those breakdowns. The last document that we have also included here in the Beyond 2023, that's just a summary that we kind of did. We provided with the senior staff. We talked about it in September, kind of a snapshot and some details of what we're thinking in these programs. So it's just a little, moving forward, it talks about some of our programs and services. And the last page of it, it's just a nice little way of saying what is in our category program and services, what's on category 1. And some people ask that, in reality, that's our corporate services, infrastructure, the flood forecasting and warning and permitting, as well as any of our costs of our conservation lands. The one I addressed, and Mr. Hodges over here might have heard this before. You look at the graphs. I draw your attention to the graphs. It talks about the different percentages, the consolidated one. The category 1, I'm going to draw your attention to. Category 1 is what the province deems mandatory for our services. You'll notice that's where the province is funding the least amount. Only 10 or 11%. Okay. So that's the overview that I'm going to talk about and the finance part, and I will turn it over to Mary to talk about some of the programs.
Okay, thanks very much for having us this evening. I know you folks deal with a lot of issues, everything from A to Z, and it's a lot. And when the environment comes up, it's so here we go again. What are we going to talk about? How many groups? How many issues? And what I want to talk about is the benefit of watershed management. We all know water flows downhill. And we have programs within the Conservation Authority that help us manage the water. When we start talking about these different category programs, and I know for most folks, this isn't normal things that you think about, but when we think about our watershed management programs, we often think about our flood forecasting, our permitting, those kinds of programs. They are very important. They are risk management types of programs where we are just ensuring that people are safe around the flooding. When we talk about the watershed management programs, these stewardship programs, the monitoring programs, the outreach and education, those are the more true watershed-wide programs where anywhere you are within our area, water will run off your property. It doesn't cause a problem running off your property. It only causes problems when it accumulates downstream. And when we are dealing with that issue, we're trying to keep people out of the floodplains and those kinds of things. But the actual management of the water is best dealt with at the property or site scale. As you can imagine, we don't have regulations to deal with that. We have recommendations. We have facilitated discussions. We have education opportunities. We run stewardship programs. We run monitoring programs to try to facilitate best practices for urban areas, urbanizing areas, agricultural areas, and these programs are taken up in many cases from a voluntary perspective. All of those programs, staff go to find funds to implement those best practices. Those projects that Brian talked about, when we work with the other levels of government, we can get some investments made, partnering with some of the local landowners to make those improvements, which then end up saving people money downstream. So, and that doesn't get part of the different numbers you see in front of you. So it's really that piece that these programs are the true watershed management piece, the offering of the stewardship, the offering of the monitoring, the trying to understand things better so that we're better managing all this water. We do manage our landscape for how we use it. So whether we're using agriculture, whether we're doing urbanization, but as a byproduct of that is the water. And if we can work with the communities and the individuals, which is what the individuals and communities asked us to do to help them manage the water, then that is in the long run going to save us all money in the long run. So that's just a little description of those category 3 programs.
And if I might add, just to kind of follow up on what Mary said, and I realize probably the majority of you might have heard it yesterday at Middlesex days, but when she talked about the projects and other funding in our annual report we have obviously haven't done 2023, so for 2022, she talked about grants we do for stewardship projects and grants. We do a little summary in our annual report. And for North Middlesex in 2022, we actually looked into 22 projects, and we helped provide over $110,000 worth of grants for those projects. So, we talked about being able to leverage dollars. I'm just saying, that's just the one for North Middlesex.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Questions, comments from council? Deputy Mayor Hodgins.
Through you, Mayor Rock, to Brian. I did send an email off to Manager Horner yesterday. And I guess maybe just as an age thing and everything else, I asked him to explain self-generated revenue. And, in short form here, I think I got it, but I asked him to explain it more and maybe he can do it again because I haven't got the email back in front of me again. If Brian wouldn't be.
Yep, absolutely. So if you go to that Schedule A, when I talked about the total program cost of 1.2 in the federal, in the self-generated revenue to 497,000, almost 500,000. If you go to the individual areas in that service agreement, we'll see the sub-watershed one, we don't have anything. But the next two, with environment monitoring, we have the 58. Watershed stewardship and restoration, we have $344,000. That's our tree planting program. That's when we charge out the trees. So that's the big number on that 497,000 is the $345,000. And the other part of it is, if you go to the last one with education outreach, that's the fees that we charge for our education programs, as well as we also receive, because we break it down, I should say, the province wants us to break it down. We do these with our federal and provincial contribution number. That when we got self-generated, we do have some other private foundations and et cetera, and other funding sources where we can generate that revenue. So that's what, that in total, that's where our $497,000 come. The big chunk of it is through our tree planting program though.
So your worship, first off, thank the Conservation Authority for the important work they do. And I just have a couple questions for clarification on page 6. How do you ration out the appropriation amongst the various communities? What is your formula?
Well, I'd like to say that it's very scientific, that I spend a lot of time doing it, but I'd be lying. These apportionment numbers come from the province. It looks at all our member municipalities and what's their value, overall assessment value. And then it takes the geographical percentage that's in our watershed for each municipality, North Middlesex being 100%, right? And then it takes into effect that total municipal value. And then it just says, okay, what's North Middlesex percentage of that total? And that's the 11.77. And that number you will see changes somewhat each and every year with our different assessment values. So that's, we don't come up with it. The province gives us those numbers annually.
And just another question for clarification. Now you're looking for approval this year for next year. What's your date for approval?
Great question. So what we're looking at, the province has said we need these agreements in place by December 31st of 2023 in order to levy for 2024. So that's, in our mind, that's the absolute last date. The next one we back up, we started our budgeting process in September, October. So we'd like to know before then, as far as what municipalities are, saying yes. In a perfect world, everybody says yes. So that's the next date that we'd say. In the perfect world, crystal ball, I'd like to say the end of June, and you'd say why? Because we do our 5-year forecasts that we present to our board in July, and in a perfect world, we'd have it by then. Okay.
Other questions? No other questions? It's hard to believe you got off that easy, isn't it, Brian? Deputy Mayor Hodgins, I knew you almost made it.
They squeak it in. No, just out of question, personal interest, yes, and I'll let Mary answer it if she wishes. I've always been a supporter of sowing trees a little bit every time on my farm. I'm just curious if there's a number. I always asked this when I was on the board many eons ago. How many trees were planted in the year of 22, like fall and everything else, like in the Oxbow Baker that you sold to individual owners and maybe planted yourself? Was there a number?
Tree planting program 2022. 223 landowners participated in ABCA's tree planting program to plant 56,760 trees.
That's the number of them. Any other questions? I just would like to say thank you, but also, Mary, I always enjoyed when you brought your programs to the board because it isn't about lakeshore protection. And I have to say that I mentioned it to Brian, I always like meetings that didn't involve lakeshore protection. Because at North Middlesex, we don't have a lot of lakeshore here. But no, we do appreciate your work and going forward because there's a lot of pressure on all of us to, as we see here tonight, to develop, but to do it properly. And so appreciate that. And thank you very much for coming. I'm sorry, Adrian wasn't here. He would have 7 or 8 more questions, I'm sure. But yeah, thank you very much.
And again, thanks for having us. And again, if you have any questions, by all means, let us know and through Adrian or whoever. Okay.
We'll do
Thanks.
that. Thank you. Okay, department reports. Oh, my goodness. Oh, geez. Pardon me. Yes, we do have another delegation. I'm sorry, it's Paul Hicks from about the urban design guidelines. And do we have Paul on Zoom? Okay, perfect. Sorry about that, Paul.
No worries. Hoping you can hear and see me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Very good. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. So good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'm happy to be here before you this evening to talk a little bit about and provide council with a little bit of a primer on urban design guidelines, as we understand that that this council is thinking about exploring adopting some. For the agenda that I put forward, we're going to talk a little bit about the purpose of tonight's presentation, a backgrounder on what urban design guidelines are, and I'll speak to you a little bit about the benefits, issues, and considerations that council will want to keep in mind as you're going through this exploratory stage. So in terms of, again, the purpose of the presentation, it is understood that this council is exploring the development of urban design guidelines for new development in the municipality, and that this is in part due to some recent developments that may have come in through the door in North Middlesex, where there may have been questions about whether the community's vision for urban design had been properly articulated to the applicants when coming forward. And this is kind of a classic impetus for examining whether or not urban design guidelines are right for your municipality. In terms of the backgrounder on urban design guidelines, what they are and what they aren't, start off with answering what is urban design. Well, urban design as a profession involves the arrangement of and design of buildings, public spaces, transport systems, services, and amenities. And it blends urban planning, architecture, and landscape architecture together to make urban areas functional and attractive. And the key there is functional and attractive. And at its core, it really is a combination of the 3 disciplines: urban planning, architecture, and landscape architecture. So what are urban design guidelines? They are guidelines that are intended to supplement the policies that you'll find in your official plan and the regulations that you'll find in your zoning bylaw. So this is taking and articulating the policy vision and the regulations one step further and taking them one step further. They provide a design framework and direction for new residential development, commercial or industrial development as well, including streetscape design and design for parks and open spaces. And they also provide guidance and direction for developers undertaking development on their properties. So instead of the developer reviewing an official plan, a very high level official plan and zoning bylaw, and making a lot of guesses about what a local municipality may want to see put forward in their community, that vision of what the community would like to see developed is articulated to the applicant in advance of them making application. So in terms of what they are not, pardon me, they are not regulations and they do not have the force of regulations. So they do not have any legislative authority behind them like that for a zoning bylaw or an official plan. They are indeed, as the name would suggest, they are indeed just guidelines. Where would they be applicable? And it's understood that currently staff are exploring development of guidelines for new development in the municipality's urban areas. And certainly urban design guidelines in terms of the scope of them, they can look at all development in a municipality, both urban and rural, or they can even be scoped down to even just specific types of development, residential development or commercial development on a main street or in a downtown. Why are they used? We've identified 4 primary purposes. The first is to develop a community-based design vision for new development in the municipality. The second being ensuring that new development is integrated into existing areas and to ensure that it reflects the positive qualities of the municipality. It also assists the municipality in taking a consistent and thoughtful approach to urban design instead of an ad hoc approach. And it helps municipalities achieve the design, cultural, environmental, and public health objectives as well. In terms of when they would be used, these guidelines would be used when an application for site plan control, plan of subdivision, or condominium is made in the municipality. They can also be used for rezonings, land division applications, variances, or official plan amendments. We don't see that as much, but they can generally be applied to all applications that are received by the municipality. When would they not be used? They would not be used for building permit applications that do not require a planning permission. So if you are building something that is in conformity with the zoning bylaw and all other applicable law, that building permit's going to be issued to you, the guidelines would not be applicable to building permit process. They're also not applicable to the regular maintenance of a building or property, and there's no requirement to bring properties up to a specific standard. And so certainly this does not, urban design guidelines don't typically regulate things like paint colors. They may suggest a heritage palette in some cases, but they certainly don't regulate what buildings will be painted, what color, or not necessarily even the materials that will be used. How are they used? So an application will come in through the door to the municipality for site plan, plan of subdivision, or condominium. The staff are going to look to see if the application involves development that falls under the scope of the guidelines. Again, pointing out that some guidelines can apply to all development in the municipality, or it can apply to very specific subsets of development. If the application does not involve the development that falls under the scope of the guideline, it will go through the traditional and normal process. If it does involve development that falls under the scope of the guidelines, then it will proceed through the normal review process that will involve reviewing for conformity with the official plan, zoning bylaw, and any engineering standards that exist. We'll also be reviewing the application in light of urban design guidelines. Council will make the decision on the application, and the applicant would then receive their building permit, or of course, with certain applications under the Planning Act, they could appeal that decision. So it does add an additional component to the review process, but it doesn't necessarily add any additional steps in the review process. And to that end, as I mentioned, these urban design guidelines are part of that review package, or they're the set of tools that the municipality has to review, and it's embedded in that standard review process. It's an additional component to it, but not an additional step to the overall development review process. In terms of benefits, issues, and considerations that we'd suggest council keep in mind as you're going through this process. In terms of benefits, again, as noted before, we do see a consistent approach to urban design as opposed to an ad hoc approach. We see that it provides a design direction that otherwise doesn't exist in our planning documents, enhances sense of place, and protects the unique character of an area, and can assist with overall branding and marketing of a community. In terms of issues that we will see different interpretations of urban design guidelines from different professionals. Just as council sees now, planners taking opposing positions on certain applications, you will see this also occur with interpretations of the guidelines. How they are used depends really on community support and council support. There does have to be buy-in from the community and buy-in from council, because they are guidelines. The adherence to them is not mandatory. And if there's not a strong buy-in or support from the community or council, you'll likely see them being ignored, so to speak. And again, as I noted before, we do need to recognize that they do add an additional layer in the development review process. So again, embedded in that review, in the larger review, but it is an additional component to the development review process. And considerations that council will want to keep in mind is how flexible or strict you would like to see the guidelines. Discussions around, we will have to have discussions around, or with the consultant team that you would hire to do this would have to have discussions around recognizing the unique character of Middlesex and North Middlesex. We need to understand how they do fit into the broader strategies that council has, again, whether they be legislated strategies and plans, or whether they be plans that you've adopted at your discretion. And we'll also need to understand what type of expertise exists in the municipality and with the municipal staff to implement the guidelines. With that, I certainly thank you for the opportunity to speak on this subject tonight, and I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you. Jaden, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, thank you, if I may. And apologies, Paul, I didn't provide you an introduction prior to your presentation, but thanks for jumping right into it.
No problem.
So Paul Hicks is, sorry, just fixing our microphones, founder and principal, urban planner at Republic Urbanism. So council may recall that we're bringing this back as one of the deferred matters that was brought up from a previous meeting earlier in the year. So the purpose of this presentation was to provide information to council about what urban design guidelines are. Paul was available to answer any questions, and then we'll be looking for direction from council where we want to go with urban design guidelines from there.
Thanks, Jaden. It's, yeah. Can we get rid of some of this echo or not? I guess not. So questions from council? No questions from council? I'll start it, I guess. I did have one that you said that this does not apply. It sounds like with the new bill that came in where people can add another house onto their lot or even up to 2 houses, it sounds like this would have no bearing. These urban guidelines would have no bearing on these new bills. Is that true?
Yes and no. So certainly the guidelines can be developed for additional units that would be constructed on a residential property. They can be provided to an applicant who's coming in for a building permit and provide some suggestions to how they may want to undertake the work. But with some of the recent changes through Bill 23, which don't allow site plan control to apply to residential developments of 10 units or under, there's certain types of residential development and multi-unit residential development that's going to occur in the municipality that will not be subject to a planning act process, and therefore would not be subject to a staff review of the guidelines.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? No other questions? All right, thank you very much, Paul, for your time.
My
We
pleasure.
appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Have a good evening, all.
You too. All right, we'll move on to department reports. Under deferred items, we have this on, and I think at that time, we can bring it up and get direction from council at that time, all right, when we go to the deferred items. All right, Jaden? Okay, department reports. First one is drainage superintendent request for improvement to the Mickelson drain. Are you doing that, Jaden? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to council. The purpose of this report is a request for drain improvement for the McKeelson drain and to appoint R. Dobbin Engineering as the drainage engineer. This request came from property owners and we received a valid petition. So we're just taking the next steps through the Drainage Act. I'll take any questions.
Questions from council? No questions? We have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor Keogh, seconded by Councillor Daigle. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Jaden. Our next one is from our building official for the first quarter. Thanks for waiting, Arnie. Appreciate it. Arnie, can I ask, just before you start your report, does Middlesex Center have urban design guidelines?
That's a great question to the mayor. So we do have urban design guidelines for one of our subdivisions. And it's not applicable law under the building code. So if I get an application for a building permit, it needs to comply with a zoning bylaw. The Building Code Act kind of outlines what the applicable laws are. Urban design guidelines are not one of them. So we've incorporated it into one of our subdivision agreements, or two of our subdivision agreements, that the developer's architect has to review the applications for building permits to be in compliance with our urban design guidelines before they apply for a building permit. And they'd submit a letter with their building permit application from the developer's landscape architect saying that they do comply with our design guidelines.
All right, thanks. Thanks. Now, having said that, go ahead with your report. I think we all have a printed copy in front of us, don't we? Go ahead.
Yeah, so through the mayor, I want to apologize. Had the wrong report for council's agenda initially. So I'm pleased to say your report is much more positive than the report I had posted, which was Middlesex Center's report. Construction activity, I'm pleased to say in North Middlesex, it's been really, really positive this first quarter in comparison to the first quarter of last year. And actually you're ahead of the game in a couple of categories, important ones. That is housing starts the first quarter this year, you're 8 and compared to 6 last year, which may seem small, but in Middlesex Center, we're about 90% down, 80% down. So it's great to be at par with last year. And permit fees and number of permits issued were up this year. So I think it's generally a very positive report that I think you'd be proud of. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them about the report.
Questions from council? No questions from council? Oh, Councillor Keel.
Thank you very much. Arnie, I know I've asked this before. I'm sure you've given me the answer. I don't remember what it is. With the building permits that are issued, you have an alternative thing down here, but any point, is there any of the structures that have been put up that are granted suites or garden houses? Do we have a measure of that differently, or is that just coming under?
Yeah, through the mayor, with your suggestion last year, we incorporated 2 new rows in our report. I guess the 4th and 5th row, we've categorized as additional residential units interior and additional residential unit exterior. Okay. And those will be how we summarize what we get in relation to the new Bill 23 and that.
Okay. Any other questions? No other questions at this time? Listen, that was a short report for staying here the extra time. Thank you very much, Arnie.
Thanks.
Thanks. Thank you. We need a motion to accept that report for information. Councillor Keogh, Councillor Nerda, all in favor? Carried. Next one, report from Human Resources, municipal travel policy. You're going to speak to that? So questions on this policy? No questions on this policy? We have a recommendation in front of us. What's your wish? Moved by Deputy Mayor Hodgins, seconded by Councillor Irwin. All in favor? Carried. Next one is Manager of Recreation Facilities, the video monitoring policy.
Mayor Rott, members of council, this policy also went before the last policy committee meeting. The purpose of this policy is to outline the procedures put in place for our video cameras at our facilities. It identifies who is able to access them, how footage is able to be obtained, as well as which locations have them in another document. Through this, the Chief Administration Officer, the Municipal Clerk, and the Manager of Recreation and Facilities are the ones who will have access to reviewing the footage. And then anyone looking to get footage will have to fill out a form that will go to the clerk, including any OPP or law agencies. Any questions?
Questions on that policy? No questions on that policy? Oh, sorry, Councillor Irwin.
Yeah, just one question. You're saying a form to the clerk to review, but not a court order?
So the court order, if there was a court order for video footage, we would then have them fill out the form the same as anyone else, and it would be turned over, and that court order would be the reason we give it over. And then that way that it's logged, should anybody come back and say, let's see your log of video surveillance you've given out, here's the form that we had filled, signed off on the clerk.
Any other questions? No other questions? We have a recommendation in front of us on the video policy. Councillor Keogh, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hodgins. In favor? Carried. Thanks, Brandon. Next one is yours again, Brandon. That is the fire hall update for spring of 2023.
Okay. So Mayor Rott, members of council, the report in front of you is an update for the fire hall. Currently, the scheduled substantial completion date is August 18th, 2023. The project currently, we are sitting at a contract value of $6,682,168.41. That is higher than the price started as. Reason being for those is contaminated soils made up $351,000. And then we are currently at $107,000 of winter heat costs. The project's original timeline when quoted was supposed to start in April and then be completed by December. Unfortunately, due to some structural steel delays, we didn't get that till September, and then compounded by a delay in the contaminated soils, it did push contractors into winter months. We are fairly lucky it was a mild winter and they were still able to progress reasonably quickly, not as quickly as they would have liked to progress during the summer months, which is the time they quoted. One other big thing in this report that I wanted to outline is the mezzanine. The mezzanine was a project that, or a part of the project that was removed due to cost saving measures. The cost saving measures, we had hoped to remove the mezzanine entirely from the facility. However, the cost of redesign, as well as the cost of deleting that actual concrete by the time we redesigned it and changed the structural steel, we were further ahead to leave it as an open space above. We did delete all the training features that were a part of it. We deleted the railings, the stairs, everything else to go along with it. Through the process, our mechanical room in the bottom of the dirty side ended up being too cluttered, and we had to move 2 transfer switches upstairs, which required a wall to go up for them to be housed on. And due to that, the staircase needed to be added for that room, so it has become a mechanical room now. The firefighters have requested that we finish the surface on that mezzanine floor, which is a $20,000 add-on. That would put a topper on it, as well as cover the, if you can remember from the fire committee who walked through it, the big circles on the end of the core slabs are currently exposed. That cover goes over the top, covers them, as well as the topper along the stairs going up. Without it, it would be left open. It would be a bit of an eyesore, but that is for council to decide. The firefighters are willing to contribute $10,000 to this, as well as all revenues from their breakfast this May. So the recommendation would be that council recommends staff to move forward with that add-on, and that the firefighters make those contributions towards the project. Any questions?
Questions? Councillor Keel.
Thank you very much. Brandon, it's $20,900 including the $10,000 contribution or?
So that is the total cost. That would be the total cost of the project, and then of that, the firefighters are contributing 10,000 plus there, so it may cost the municipality an extra 7 to 8. Yeah.
Okay, other questions? Councillor Nerda.
And are they only going to do this year's fire breakfast proceeds to come up with the remaining? So are they asking us again, I guess essentially to pay the 7,000? 20, you said it.
So the total cost to put the topper on, which includes the stairs, is $20,000. Well, 21,000, I guess. And then the firefighters are saying they know it's 21,000. We're willing to give 10 plus all of our breakfast. I don't know how much they have in their reserves, but I think 10 substantially depletes them, but they're willing to do that to get this finish on as part of their contribution to a project.
So what is it going to cost us?
So our total cost would be dependent on how much they make on their breakfast. So it would be 11,000 less whatever they make on breakfast.
And is it only going to be this year that they're going to be giving their cost of the breakfast, or is it going to be an ongoing thing until it's completely covered by the breakfast cost?
To my knowledge, it is this year's that they have identified. I think that there are other funds they would go back to trying to rebuild those reserves that they've depleted.
Other questions? Other questions? So I have to say, I'm really pleased to see that the firefighters have put skin in the game here and to get this to happen. I think that's important. And I just wondered, we have a meeting next Thursday, is it? Next Thursday evening, our fire hall meeting is next Thursday. Could we do another tour at that night? And could we invite the other council members that would like to come and see the fire hall to that as well for that tour?
I can reach out to KNL and see if we can make that happen. Yes.
I think some of the other council has not seen it at all yet inside, right? And it is, you'll get a better perspective of what it would look like if they didn't finish that up there. So I think that would be good. So if we could do that, that would be great. But before our meeting, if we could meet a little early and do that again. Thank you. So any other questions for Brandon on his report? No other questions? We have a recommendation in front of us. And that is to proceed with the concrete finished topper on the mezzanine area for the fire hall for an added $20,900 plus HST. Are you moving that? Moved by Councillor Nerda, seconded by Councillor Daigle. In favor? Carried. Our next report is economic development, and for the plan for the second blessings. Natalie.
Thank you, Mayor. It is our recommendation that we approve the application for the amount of.
Thank you. Questions? Any questions from anyone on this? We have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor Irwin, second by Councillor Nerda. All in favor? Carried. Excellent. Glad to see them doing it. Next is passing of accounts.
Thank you, your worship. So the report right in front of you outlines the municipality's expenses for the period of April 14th to the 27th, totaling $812,607 and a penny. I have not received any questions via email.
Questions on the accounts? Any questions? Seeing none, we have a recommendation in front of us to accept the report. Deputy Mayor Hodgins, Councillor Daigle, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Committee reports. The first is Lake Huron Primary, and I think the only, unless you have something on that, John?
Just to remind you, open house, the tour actually for staff and council members on Friday. It's 11 till 3.
Yeah. So to save everybody driving, what time, I think if we could meet here at the office, right, and just go with less vehicles, what time would you like to meet?
Just want to be there in time to get parking. They stress
So
very much parking.
10 o'clock? 10 o'clock Friday morning?
It just might be just easier from my direction to head.
Okay, so if you're not there by 10:05, you missed it. Okay, so let's just put it that anybody who's going would meet here at 10 o'clock Friday morning. Okay, sounds good. ABCA, municipal newsletter, Blue Water Recycling.
Just the information if you're not told.
Okay, economic development.
No, it's your report.
Okay, local school advisory.
There is a meeting tomorrow with members of the Community School Alliance to discuss the potential changes that the province is bringing in terms of managing school buildings. And the deputy mayor and myself are continuing to work on building the committee and bringing the membership forward.
Thank you. I think we can also expect, after talking to Doug Raycraft yesterday, request for North Middlesex to be a member of the Alliance. Somewhere along the road, we drop that membership.
That's correct. So Doug will be at the meeting tomorrow.
Yeah, and he's going to send, but he is going to send a request in on that to address it to council. Okay. Recreation Committee? Okay. Policies, we've received them. You've seen the results of those tonight. Fire Committee, we meet next week. Anything you want to ask, Councillor Daigle? Okay. Aqua? Okay, correspondence. Middlesex London Board of Health meeting summary, receive and file. Town of Grimsby, Port Colborne, changes to the Municipal Heritage Register, receive and file. City of Stratford, use of long-term care funding support community care services, receive and file. Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry addressing risks from legacy oil and gas wells, receive and file. Region of Municipality of Waterloo, candidate privacy protection, receive and file. Federation of Northern Ontario Municipalities, bail reform, receive and file. The next item is 11.7, 11.8, 11.9, 11.10, and 11.11 we had filed previously. Is there any questions on any of them? Okay. Other business. No other business? All right, deferred items. We had a couple, we talked the urban design guidelines. Jaden. Following that, council needs to give some direction what they would like to see, correct? Following that, the delegation?
Yes, correct. Through you, Mr. Mayor, that was the intention to bring some information forward. More information just generally about what urban design guidelines are and not, and how they can be applied. And I guess prior to moving forward with any RFP or further investigations into urban design guidelines, we look for direction from council and how council would like to proceed.
Okay, before I ask for questions, do we have any idea the costs of doing this?
It would have been a great question for Paul. I think he was prepared. But it would depend on the scope as well, you know, like in what we want to focus in on. I don't have the cost though.
Okay, I'll leave the questions, comments from council on this. Councilor Irwin?
I didn't even have to put my hand up, your worship.
No, well, you brought this forward, so I figured you had
Well, first
comments.
off, interesting presentation this evening, and it made me think about the Economic Development Committee meeting tomorrow night, where the presenter talked about urban design guidelines having an important branding and marketing component to a community. So we think about our community, what it is, how it resonates with people, why they want to move here. There may be considerations around that in terms of economic development. Certainly, the previous committee from the previous council talking about what kind of community we have and what makes it unique. I can see some tie-ins. I guess I have a question for all of council. Are we looking for design guidelines to fit the whole community or certain urban centers like Main Street, Park Hill, and Main Street, Elsa Craig, and how far afield? I have my own thoughts, obviously, but I'm curious about others. And we know how this initially came about in terms of a proposal that came forward the council previously a couple of months ago. So I'm curious about that. I mean, I'm a big fan of built heritage. I have to admit that up front, right?
Okay. Comments from council on the question? Deputy Mayor Hodgins.
Well, it's through Mayor Rob to Bill. I'm just curious, like, number one, I think the two main ones would be Elsa Craig and Park Hill. I don't know what you were thinking of, because yes, we have smaller other ones, but they're the two main ones that I think we should be centering our attention to. You know, especially with expansion of, that's where our subdivisions are going. So, and all the other things that go with them. So that I think alone would be pretty well 99% of it.
Councilor Irwin, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, your worship, and I appreciate the opportunity to have a conversation on this. I also was intrigued by the presenter this evening when he talked about, and certainly our chief building inspector, when he talked about the ability to weave this into subdivision agreements and how new buildings can look. And we've had at least one horror story. Can I say that?
It's your words. Go ahead and say what you like.
I'll use that terminology about mentioning the property, where some design guidelines might, I'm not stressing the term might because I know they're voluntary, might have been helpful. So as a council, would we even consider that in terms of new subdivision design or how buildings could look in terms of considerations? We heard at Middlesex Day yesterday, one of the presenters talked about, as an example, I don't know if you want to consider this or not, the importance of having a front porch. Right. And how that could fit into a community. So I think this lends itself to a conversation as much as anything else, your worship.
Okay. Any other comments? Councilor Daigle.
We're talking about Elsa Craig Park Hill.
And Nairn. And it should include Nairn. Yeah.
Yeah, because there are subdivision proposals in that area. So we have to look at wherever we have subdivision proposals.
Okay. Other comments? I agree that conversation, and are you going to bring that conversation to the Economic Development Committee as well and have some conversation on that?
Well, I'll defer to the chair of the Economic Development Committee and see what Councilor Nerd's opinion is on that.
I think we could bring it in front of the committee, get some opinions, get some thoughts, and go from there.
Okay, thank you. I would like to somehow find out some kind of a scope on costing to do this, because I believe it's going to be a budget item. Correct? I think this will end up being a budget item. I don't believe it's a small ticket item by the time you go through all the process. Councilor Keel.
What do you think the cost of this program will all be and how customers would like this to be?
Yeah. But still get some kind of an idea, like just to some kind of a range as to what we're going. I was a little disappointed when I first saw the report that it didn't include those individual houses that can be added into the middle of an existing neighborhood. I, you know, I was a little disappointed to hear that, but anyways, it's good to know that ahead of time though. Yeah. Oh, your last name's not 23. What are you talking about? Okay, anyways, is there any more on that? I think we can leave that right now, but I like the idea of going to the Economic Development Committee to have a conversation and to go from there. All right. Trail proposal, well, I have that started as well. You're going to speak to that?
So Mayor Rob, members of council, just an update to clear this from the deferred list. Regarding the trail proposal, the staff have investigated this proposal and found the bridge that's the main thing in this trail proposal has been recommended for decommissioning by our engineers. So the interested parties in continuing to work towards this trail have been directed by staff to join the North Middlesex Trails group that's already been established in the community. They're the ones working on the ABCA trail. So any further inquiries on this shall be filtered through the Recreation Advisory Committee, and any further action will be brought to council through the committee.
Thanks, Brandon. I do like the idea of one group doing the trails instead of a group here and a group there. I like that idea. Any questions on that or comments on that? No? Thank you, Brandon. The next one that I have started is the request the OPP annual report and speeding concerns in Park Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the councilors. 2 items on my memo there for you. We were in contact with Inspector Ross Stewart, Detachment Commander for the Middlesex detachment of the OPP. An annual report is set to appear in July 19th, 2023. And then I don't know if you have noticed increased presence within Park Hill as we requested increased enforcement. We requested that on April 24th, and we were advised that a focus patrol would be in the area affected immediately. And we actually did receive note that 25 tickets or charges were laid recently.
In one day?
In one day. Yeah. Thank you.
Councilor Irwin.
The actually the officer who laid or provided, I don't know what the term is, most of the tickets was at the police committee meeting last night. And I can share with council predominantly almost all the tickets, not quite, but almost all were about people running stop signs. Not speeding, not parking, running stop signs. A couple were cell phones, and I feel sorry for people because that's a pretty big bite, but almost all were stop signs. So,
okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments on that? Seeing none. The last one I have is on the provincial policy statement, additional residential units. Stephanie, can you speak to that a little bit or?
Sure, I wasn't here at the initial meeting, but I was asked to provide, I guess,
Can I ask you, does the size of the lot that they want to build on, because, I mean, you look at minimum distance separation that you always have had, does that bear into this at all, or is it?
so there's the province rules today, so through bill 23. units. Each one has to have one dedicated parking space, and that's, it. In terms of room right now.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for Stephanie on this? Councillor Daigle.
Stephanie, when we discussed the outside settlement areas, we're saying that the person has to get an official plan on that and zoning bylaw on that, which is quite costly. Look at being in the urban area, it's, plus they'd have to pay for the building. In the urban areas, it's just a building permit. It just seems to be a large inequity here as far as how we treat our people.
And if I can add to that, so I will.
Your worship, we did discuss the proposed new provincial policy statement at our April 19th council meeting, where it talked about the potential for additional building or residences on farms, up to 3 per farm lot and up to 3 lots per farm potentially in the statement. If you remember correctly, I raised it at the April 19th meeting.
So through the mayor to the councillor, yes, that. At the county level and then local levels as well, as it'll have a large impact on how we process planning, and certainly has been a change from the outlook on.
Thank you. Councillor Daigle. All right, thank you. We haven't had a county council meeting since April 11th. You see the highlights are there because of the Good Roads Conference. But there's also, remember, next Tuesday, the 9th, is the local council day. So anybody who wants to attend. Any questions on the county, what's going on? No, I will say that they're done driving the piling in at the Blacks Bridge. They just finished yesterday on that. So that's moving along. So reading of the bylaws, Ashley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Today we have all bylaws listed for all readings. And so that being said, it's recommended that bylaws 43 to 49 of 2023 be read a first and second time.
Moved by Councillor Daigle, Councillor Nerda. All in favor? Carried. And third and final, Deputy Mayor Hodgins, Councillor Irwin, all in in favor? Carried. Thank you. At this time, we need a motion to go into closed for the purpose of trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, which, if disclosed, could reasonably be expected to prejudice significantly the competitive position or interfere significantly with the contractual or other negotiations of a person, group of persons, or organization, future integrity commissioner appointment, approval of previous meetings. Motion to go into close.